Hi, I'm Karl Konrad and welcome to Australian Immigration News, proudly brought to you by Australian Immigration Law Services here in Sydney. At last, the New South Wales Government released its sponsorship list for the 190 and 491 visas. Now all states and territories have published their requirements. The new list from New South Wales for the 190 visa is for the first time very transparent. Now it identifies the pass marks needed for each occupation and the number of years of work experience required. The highly competitive occupations such as accountants, engineers and IT professionals have quite a high bar to reach, and the information will be disappointing for most. For other occupations such as welfare support workers, 70 points and no work experience requirement is wonderful information for them. Many trade occupations have a low 65-point requirement and minimal work experience as well. Although not good news for many, at least people can now decide to keep remaining in New South Wales or move into another state. It also sends a big message to the engineering, IT and business students that New South Wales is no longer a state of preference to come and study here. If you're lucky to get a job and be sponsored by an employer, that's fine. Otherwise, perhaps other states are best to study in. And speaking of studying in New South Wales, the Premier said recently on Sky News that it was a mistake to ask international students to leave at the beginning of the pandemic.
Australia's amazing. Sydney's amazing. We think everyone wants to come here, but we're a bit arrogant because our reputation isn't as good as we think it is. Is that right?
Well, take international students, for example. This is something I worked on as Treasurer during the pandemic. We had, obviously, we sent many students home. And at a time during that period of 2 years, we had other countries, the UK, Canada, that were really aggressively targeting foreign students into their country, whereas we were saying, please don't come. In fact, we were actually saying, please leave. So
that's a Morrison government hangover. Was that a mistake?
I don't think we should have asked them to leave, yes.
He then went on further to outline that clearing the visa processing backlog should not be our only focus.
There's a lot of work that we have to do, I think, reputationally, to not just to attract people into the country which have the skills that we need. So first things first, the backlog needs to be removed. But secondly, I agree with you, we can't have the arrogance to sit there and think that people just want to come to Australia. We're competing with countries from around the world. So I think some of the changes they've made today in terms of fast-tracking permanency, I think will go a long way to doing that.
As we mentioned in our summary at the summit last weekend, it is the intention of the government to raise the temporary skilled migration income threshold known as the TSMIT. Of course, our comments section has been flooded with questions about how much this is going to rise. Mr. O'Connor gave some indication of what we can expect.
Let's move to migration. The government's lifting the permanent migration intake to a record 195,000. There was clear consensus at the summit that there needed to be movement here to deal with skills shortages. But in the long term, is this the best way to fill those gaps?
Of course, the immigration decision is important. What we had under a previous government, we had Peter Dutton and Scott Morrison not understand that immigration is also an economic portfolio. We have almost 1 million visas that have not been processed. We've got thousands and thousands of temporary visa holders who've been here for a decade in areas of skill shortage who can't get permanent residency. And we had, of course, the temporary visa holders who were not provided any JobKeeper or Job Seeker flee the country. It was either starve or leave. So we were left with greater skill shortages than should have been the case if the previous government understood the importance of immigration and temporary and permanent skilled migration to the economy.
Let me ask you about the temporary skilled migrants. They currently have to be paid at least $53,900. That's sort of the minimum. That figure hasn't moved for nearly a decade. Will that threshold be increased?
Look, we have to examine that. That has meant it's fallen in real terms. Obviously, if it's nominally the same for 9 years, we have to make sure that it's not about bringing people in to displace local workers.
Where should it be? 3 years ago, you said it should be 65,000 was your proposal.
I think, it's really, it's subject to negotiations. I think there has to be a lifting of that measure.
You obviously think it needs to be 65 or more, because I
think the critical problem here is we have, on one hand, temporary visas that are focused on high skills, and then we need to target that and not be looking to displace Australian workers. On the other hand, there is another issue, which is even in areas of relatively low pay, like aged care, we have a shortage as well. So I think we have to think about this. These are complex issues, and we need to work at how we deal with each sector.
Clearly, the government is aware that a single figure for all occupations on the TSMIT may no longer be appropriate. It is highly likely, as the Minister indicated, that there will be a grading of the TSMIT in the future, one that is possibly linked to ANZCO skill level ranges, higher for the skill level 1 groups and progressively lower down the ranks. Many of our viewers who hold the 491 visas are concerned, of course, that the raising of the TSMIT will affect their 191 visa chances. However, we cannot see any possible outcome that those who already hold the 491 visas will be adversely affected by any TSMIT change, so no need to worry. Now, the increased figure to 195,000 places for the migration cap was not really a surprise to anyone. However, it was disappointing for many who thought it could be higher. It was a surprise, though, to see the former head of the Immigration Department and now opposition leader of the Liberal Party, Peter Dutton, shedding tears about the increased figure.
A final point is that the government's made an announcement in relation to the migration program. It's too little too late. This is a decision that should have been made 100 days ago when the government was elected, but of course they didn't do that. They waited for this union summit, and we do need an increase in the migration numbers, but we'll see what the government actually delivers, because this can be many, many months, if not a couple of years in the pipeline. So these are all grand announcements. I want to see the rubber hit the road.
Now, he did shed a tear, didn't he? I'm sure I saw one, but I know it's hard to pick it up with that same look all the time. He was right, though, about one thing. This summit has just delayed the Labor Party getting on with the job of increasing the migration figures when there was no real reason to do so. So that's all for another fascinating week in the world of Australian immigration. If you've enjoyed our show, hit the like icon to show your support. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well so you don't miss any future productions. As always, take care out there, and I'll see you next time. So bye for now.